Hey friends, it's Laurie. I'm so happy you stopped by. If you like apples and sunflowers and pumpkins, today I'm sharing 3 fall DIY wreaths. I used an assortment of different supplies to help keep the cost down. And as always, I hope you have fun crafting with me. So let's get busy. To make my fall apple wreath, I'm starting with an 18-inch grapevine wreath, and I picked mine up at Michael's. I'll be adding on some greenery, and I'm using 4 leafy stems that came from Temu. The stems are too long, so I used my clippers and I snipped them off about halfway up. I'm adding hot glue to the end of each stem, then attaching 2 heading upwards and 2 heading downwards. I'm using this as my base greenery because it reminds me of apple leaves, but you can always change it up and use something different. Before I attach the apples, I need to find their placement, so I'm going to make my bow first. I'll be attaching it in this general area, so using my hand, I know about how large I want it to be. I'm using 2 ribbons. I believe they both came from the Dollar Tree. One is a 3-inch burlap ribbon, and my second is a 2.5-inch wired gingham ribbon. I'll be attaching each of the ribbons together using an 18-inch piece of floral wire. To make things easier, I like to use my bow maker, and I picked mine up a while back on Amazon. I'm starting with the burlap and making a 14-inch tail. I'm then following up with 6 5-inch loops. With the loops complete, the end of the burlap makes just about another 14-inch tail. When I'm done, I'm then removing the bow and wrapping my piece of floral wire over the center. I then pull the 2 ends together and twist it tightly on the back. I then fluff out my loops. For the second bow, I'm using the gingham ribbon, and I'm making a 10-inch tail. I then make 7 3.5-inch loops. I then follow up with another 10-inch tail and cut both ends off at an angle. I'm using my second piece of wire, pulling it over the center of the bow, and then twisting it tightly on the back. Just like the burlap ribbon, I'm now fluffing out the loops. I'm attaching my 2 bows together, placing the gingham over the burlap. I'm pulling the 2 pieces of wire to the back and then twisting them around the burlap tightly. I now have 4 pieces of wire on the back, and to just make things a bit neater, I'm twisting 2 pieces of the wire together. I'm attaching the bow to my wreath by first placing the 2 pieces of wire around the grapevine and then twisting them tightly in the back. You can always cut off the excess wire. I usually just fold mine over. For the apples, I was only lucky enough to find one at my Dollar Tree, and this one measures about 2.5 inches tall and 3 inches wide. I'm adding on 5 more, and these I already had on hand. Mine measure about 2.5 inches wide and 2 inches tall. You can always find them at Hobby Lobby, sometimes Walmart, and definitely online. I'm finding the placement of the Dollar Tree apple first and tucking it up near my ribbon. I'm then adding on 2 more, leaving a bit of a space between each. Happy with their placement, I then attach them with a generous amount of hot glue. I turned my wreath around and added the last 3 to the top. Then once again, I used my hot glue gun to attach them. I'm popping in to say thank you for stopping by, and if you're new to my channel, please consider clicking on that little red subscribe button below and leaving me a thumbs up. To all my returning friends, you know I'm always so happy to see you, and I can't wait to chat with everyone down below in the comments. I'm now adding on some different layers of greenery, and I'm starting with 5 pieces of lamb's ear. The stems were a bit long, so I did trim them down. I added some hot glue onto the stem of each piece, added 2 onto the bottom of my wreath, and 3 onto the top. For my next addition of greenery, I'm adding on a stem from the Dollar Tree, and it reminds me of boxwood. After clipping all 5 away from the main stem, I'm using my hot glue gun and attaching 2 on the bottom and 3 on the top of my wreath. To incorporate a bit of the color of the burlap ribbon onto my wreath, I'm using a piece of this light brown eucalyptus from the Dollar Tree. After snipping it away from the main stem, I have 5 pieces. I'm attaching 2 on the bottom and 3 on the top. I'm using 1 more stem of eucalyptus from the Dollar Tree, and this comes in a variegated green color. I cut them away, and so once again I have 5 short stems. I'm adding 2 on the bottom and 3 on the top. To add a pop of color, I'm using some fall leaves from this Dollar Tree vine. I'm using a total of 9 leaves, 1 yellow, 2 orange, and 6 red. The reds are 2 different sizes. I'm starting by first attaching one of the larger red leaves, then the yellow and an orange. I'm then attaching a smaller red leaf near the largest apple. I'm adding a small red leaf to the top and finishing up with the rest. For the final accent, I'm adding on 1 stem of bittersweet, and this came from the Dollar Tree. Once I cut them away from the main stem, it gave me 6, and I randomly spaced them 3 on the bottom and 3 on the top. With everything in place, I think this pretty apple wreath is perfect for the fall season. To start my fall rope wreath, I'm using one of the 14-inch wire wreath forms from the Dollar Tree. As the base, I'm using nautical rope from the Dollar Tree, and there are two different weights. One is just a little bit thinner than the other, and I actually used both for my wreath. I used 11 packages, but depending on the weight of the rope and how long you cut them, you may need a little more or a little less. I made sure that I used my sharp scissors, and then I cut my pieces at 7 inches. If you're a little bit off here and there, not to worry, because once they're attached to the wreath, you won't even notice. I didn't cut my rope all at once. I cut about a handful and then just cut them as needed. To attach them, I'm placing my first piece around the 2 outer wires. I'm then making sure that the 2 ends match up. I place some hot glue between them and then pinch them together. I'm now placing my next piece beside my first piece of rope around the center and the inside wire, and once again adding some hot glue and then pinching the 2 together. For my third piece, I'm wrapping it around the 2 outside wires, just like my first. I then added on the hot glue and pinched the 2 pieces together. I'm adding on my fourth piece of rope right next to the third. Once again, I'm wrapping it around the inside and the center wires, adding on some hot glue and pinching the 2 together. I continued following the same instructions as I worked my way around the form. This is how your wreath will look after you've added on most of the rope. I have to say it can be a bit monotonous, and you have to be super careful to know where the glue is when you're pinching the rope together so that you don't burn yourself. I was listening to some good music, and the wreath worked up pretty quick. In one of my past videos, I used the white cotton nautical rope from the Dollar Tree to make a Christmas wreath. And I made that one the same way I'm making this one. Now that I'm done, you can see that some of the rope has frayed as I was adding it. But that's not a problem because that's exactly what you want to happen. Because a lot of the rope didn't fray, I'm now untwisting and kind of just pushing my fingers in and pulling it apart. By doing this, you're making your wreath nice and full. The hot glue does bind the rope together, but as I'm doing this, I am being fairly gentle. With that complete, I'm going to start adding on some of my layers. I'm using 8 of these floral picks that I already had on hand. You can find similar ones at the Dollar Tree. Just be sure that they're in the fall colors. To get started, I'm attaching my fall picks to the wreath. I'm having the 3 on the bottom and the 3 on the top heading in the same direction. I'll be making a bow for the side of my wreath, so I'm going to leave a bit of an open space. My last 2 picks, they'll be heading upwards. Happy with their placement, I'm attaching them with my hot glue. I'm using some green leaves that I already had on hand, and I'm using 2 different styles and filling in between my picks. As I was adding them, I pretty much tried to mimic what I did on the bottom onto the top. And now, just like the picks, I'm happy with their placement, so I'm using my glue gun to attach them. I'm now adding on my second set of leaves. I have 8 of them. You can always use more or less, and I'm just tucking them in between the picks to fill in those open spaces. And you can see as I'm adding them, I'm once again leaving that open space to accommodate my bow. To be sure that nothing falls off of my wreath, I'm using my glue gun to attach them. To bring in a bright pop of color, I'm using these Dollar Tree fall leaves. I pulled each set from the main stem and then cut them into individual leaves. And now, just like I did with the green leaves, I'm once again tucking them in here and there to fill in the open spaces. The best part about not permanently attaching them as you're placing them is if you're not happy, you can just move them around. Now that I'm done, I once again grabbed my hot glue gun to attach them permanently in place. To make the bow for my wreath, I'm using this 2.5-inch pumpkin and sunflower ribbon, along with a green 2.5-inch burlap ribbon, and these both came from the Dollar Tree. I'll be attaching my bow together using a piece of floral wire. I'm using my bow maker that I picked up on Amazon a while back, and starting with the green burlap ribbon, I'm giving myself one 16-inch tail. I'm then making 4 5-inch loops. I'm then finishing up, adding on another 16-inch tail and cutting them both at an angle. I'm now adding on my sunflower and pumpkin ribbon. Once again, I'm giving myself 2 16-inch tails cut at an angle. Instead of 5-inch loops, I'm making 4 4-inch loops. With my bow complete, I'm now attaching it together with a piece of floral wire. I placed it over the center, pulled tightly, and twisted it on the back. Then, to finish up, I just fluffed out the loops. There were 2 short pieces of wire in the back, and I just snipped those off with my clippers. You can definitely use your bow as is. I'm going to give mine a bit more of a finished look by using a short piece of the matching ribbon. I turned it over, added a line of glue, folded in the edge, and I did this on both sides to make the ribbon a little bit thinner. To attach it, I added some hot glue to the front of my bow, placed down the ribbon, wrapped it around tightly, and then attached it in the back with more hot glue. I placed it in the opening on my wreath and then used my glue gun to secure it. I'm adding 4 flowers to my wreath, and I'm using 2 of the yellow and 2 of the orange sunflowers from the Dollar Tree. I'll also be adding 1 of the small pumpkins, and this came from the Dollar Tree as well. With the bow attached, it makes it easier to find the placement of my sunflowers, and I'm placing 2 on the bottom and 2 on the top. Once again, I grabbed my glue gun. What would we do without them? And I attached the sunflowers in place. To finish up, I'm placing the Dollar Tree pumpkin in the center of my wreath and once again attaching it with my glue gun. This last step is completely optional. I'm adding in some of the fall berry picks. These come from the Dollar Tree, and I separated them into individual pieces. I place them randomly here and there around the wreath, and this just gives it another layer of visual interest. Once I had them all in place, I then used my trusty glue gun and attached them. Now that I'm done, this pretty sunflower and pumpkin rope wreath, it makes the perfect addition to my fall home decor, and it looks amazing hanging on my house. Getting started, I'm using an 18-inch grapevine wreath, and I picked this up at Michael's. My store had all their spring and summer flowers marked down to 80% off, so I picked up some of this bush grass. It was originally $9.99, but it cost me $2. The pink flowers won't work for this wreath, so I'm just removing them with my scissors. For this wreath, you can use an assortment of different greenery, so always feel free to change it up and make it your own. Now that I'm done, I'll hang on to these because I'm sure I'll be using them in a different project. Using my clippers, I'm now cutting the stems away from the main stem. I have 12 stems of greenery, and I'm starting by tucking it in between the grapevine wreath. Starting on the bottom, I'm then matching the same on the top. Don't worry if it's not perfect and it looks kind of messy, because that is exactly what we're going for. Once those are in place, I'm then using my other greenery to fill out the side. Now that I'm done, when I turn it over, some of the wires are kind of sticking out, so I just used my clippers and I cut them short against the wreath. To make sure they all stay in place, I'm adding some hot glue to each stem. To define the ends on my wreath, I'm using 2 pumpkin picks that I found at Walmart, and they were 97 cents each. I removed the tags and slid in the bottom stem, then added the top directly above. Then, to make sure they don't move, I hot glued them in place. I'm attaching 3 pumpkins to my wreath, a green and a fall plaid, and just like the picks, they were 97 cents each. I'm also using a soft white pumpkin, and I picked this one up at the Dollar Tree. I'm attaching all 3 to one side, and I'm using hot glue to hold them in place. You can always add on different colored pumpkins to change up the theme of the wreath. I'm adding on another layer of greenery, and I'm using some pieces of ivy that I already had on hand. You don't need to use ivy, just some type of greenery to add on a second layer. To attach the first small piece, I added some hot glue in between my pumpkins. I then draped it over the green pumpkin and attached it underneath. I attached the end of a longer piece under the green pumpkin and hot glued it in place. I let the glue cool and then weaved it through the greenery. I then added on more hot glue to help hold it in place. I turned my wreath around and followed the same instructions for my next piece of ivy. And just like my last piece, I weaved this one through as well and hot glued it in place. To incorporate some of the colors from the plaid pumpkin, I'm using one of the fall foliage stems from the Dollar Tree. There are a couple of berries with the leaves, and I'm going to use those as well. I'm using my clippers and separating them all from the main stem. They come with 2 berry clusters, and I'm attaching one in the center of the 3 pumpkins. My second stem of berries is attached to 2 of the leaves, and I'm attaching that on the outside next to the pumpkin. I have 6 sets of 2 leaves. I'm attaching them on the bottom of the wreath and then pretty much copying them on the top. The Dollar Tree sells different colors of fall leaves, and those would work great too for this wreath. I'm using a stem of lamb's ear that I already had on hand. It comes in 3 sections. I'm leaving 2 as is, and I'm pulling apart 1 into the 3 sections. I'm attaching the larger ones onto the end of my wreath and then hot gluing them into place. And now I'm adding on 1 of the 3 pieces of lamb's ear on the outside of my 3 pumpkins. I'm then adding a piece halfway down the lower end of my wreath and then one directly across on the top. I'm adding on 2 small green pumpkins. These came from the Dollar Tree and they originally were a 3-pack, but I used the missing one in another project. To make the lines pop, I'm using a brown colored pencil and following along the inside lines on each one. If you prefer the pumpkins as is, you can always skip this step. With that complete, I'm adding 1 on the outside of my 2-end white pumpkins. If you prefer not to use the green pumpkins, you could always add in a light orange, and I think that would look great too. I'm adding 2 flowers to my wreath, and I'm using these pretty tan cosmos from the Dollar Tree. I'm only using 2, so I snipped them from the main stem, and I'm attaching 1 on the bottom and 1 on the top of my wreath. Once in place, I followed up with some hot glue. I'm adding 1 last layer to my wreath. I picked up this bunch of flowers. They were on the spring summer clearance at Michael's, and I think I paid $1.50 for them. I'm only using the small white flower stems, and I'm snipping them off with my clippers. With the flowers cut free, I'm now evenly spacing them around my wreath. I'm making my wreath in more of a farmhouse neutral theme, but you could change up the flowers and the pumpkins and add in some bright pops of color. Once again, I'm following up with my glue gun so that they don't move out of place. To finish up, I'm once again using my brown colored pencil. I'm working my way around the wreath and following the lines in all the other pumpkins. But of course, I'm skipping the fall fabric one. I really like how it gives the pumpkins dimension and the colors really pop on the wreath. My farmhouse pumpkin wreath is complete and it's ready to welcome fall. Here we are at the end of the video, and I really hope you had fun crafting with me. If you're new to my channel and you're thinking, hey, I'd like to come back and hang out with her again, don't forget to click that little red subscribe button below. My wish for you is that you have a safe and an amazing day, and until next time, bye everybody!